Have you ever shared something deeply personal about your spiritual awakening with someone and immediately regretted it? Maybe the other person looked at you like you were crazy, or they dismissed it, or they said something that made you second guess what you experienced. I've been there myself, and after going through my own awakening and working with hundreds of others going through theirs, I've learned that while vulnerability and openness are incredibly important on this path, there are certain experiences and realizations that are simply not meant to be shared. It's not about you trying to hide something, but some of the things are sacred and they belong to you. And sharing them with the wrong person, someone who isn't on the awakening path, can actually do more harm than good. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 things about your spiritual awakening that I believe you should keep to yourself. And more importantly, why protecting these experiences is not about secrecy. It's actually about honoring the depth of what you're going through. To illustrate the first point, I want to take you back to the very beginning of my awakening. I was still working for companies at the time, and I was looking for a new job. I had gone through interviews for this specific position, and it looked very, very promising. I passed all the rounds, did amazing on the assignment, and I made it all the way to the final stage. On paper, everything looked pretty fantastic, you know. The company looked good, the salary was great, and I was quite happy. But something wasn't sitting right with me. I can't fully explain it, but I remember that it was this knowing that, it said something better is around the corner. This isn't it. And there were certain small things in the conversations with the manager that gave me a funny feeling. And because I was still in the very early phase of my awakening and still getting used to trusting my intuition, I made a mistake. I mentioned this feeling to a really close family member. I told them, I don't know what to do. I feel like I need to remove myself from this hiring process and look for another job. This doesn't feel right, and I feel pretty certain about it. I feel like something better is around the corner. This person looked at me and said, no, you should take the job. It looks great. The market is tough right now and you might not find something better. So just take it. And once you're in, you can look for something else while you're in this job. And that was it. In that moment, sharing my intuitive certainty with someone else completely shattered it and made me doubt myself. I couldn't sleep for the next couple of nights. I was confused. I was doubting myself because that quiet knowing that had felt so clear suddenly felt uncertain. And it happened all because I had handed my power and certainty to someone else's logic and someone else's fear about the job market. And after going back and forth for a couple of days, I thought to myself, I'm going to trust this feeling even though this person I love doesn't understand it. And if I'm out of a job for months, so be it. So I turned out the job. The company themselves were also a little bit confused, but I said that I just wasn't going through with it and removed myself from the process. And this family member was a little bit shocked and they didn't agree with my decision. 3 weeks later, I kid you not, out of nowhere, I got a phone call, an actual call, from a recruiter from a different company offering a different position at a much better company with a much better pay, and everything about it felt aligned and smooth and meant to be. It felt like it was really meant for me. And now, suddenly, my intuitive feeling made a lot of sense. And this taught me a really big lesson and something I see happen over and over again with the people I work with. When you're on a spiritual awakening path, your energy opens up, your intuition sharpens, and you start feeling things you never felt before. The energy of other people, the intentions behind situations, and how each decision feels. Everything around you in your life starts giving you feedback. But at the same time, you're doubting those feelings because we've been taught our whole lives to use our mind, make a pros and cons list, ask other people what they think, get validation from outside before you trust yourself. Sensing all this energy is so foreign to us, so we don't trust it. So we do what feels natural. We go to other people, close to us and we say, "What do you think I should do?" And they tell you. But then their fear becomes your doubt and their logic becomes your confusion. So here's the first important thing you should be very careful about. You can absolutely ask people for support and you can ask for their input, but when you have a really strong intuitive feeling, when you have that certainty that comes from somewhere deeper than your thinking mind, you don't need to share it with other people. Some of the most important insights I have about my life, about people, about small, things or interactions, I keep those to myself because I've learned that I am my greatest guide. And if I am my greatest guide, then the decisions that come from my own intuitive knowing don't need to be validated or questioned by someone else. They're mine to act on. Because the moment you share that certainty with someone else, you're giving them the power to cloud it. You're inviting their doubt into your knowing, and it makes everything so much more confusing. So one of the things about your spiritual awakening that you should not tell people about is your intuitive feeling and certainty. Keep it sacred and keep it for you. And as you become more careful about protecting your certainty, there's something else that you should totally and absolutely keep to yourself. In the movie The Matrix, I love that movie, Neo is given the choice between the blue pill and the red pill. And the blue pill means that you stay asleep. You go back to your life, everything stays comfortable, and you never know the truth about what life is really like. The red pill means that you wake up, you see behind the curtain, and you see everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And here's the thing about taking the red pill. Once you take it, you can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. And that's exactly what a spiritual awakening is. You take the red pill and you wake up. And suddenly, you cannot see life the same way anymore. You see through the matrix, the systems, the conditioning, the way you're all playing a game without realizing it. You see the superficiality in relationships that you once thought were deep, and you see the control and automation in things you once accepted without question. This can be a lot to take in and process, so no wonder that many of us on this awakening path feel overwhelmed, disoriented, and lonely because now you're awake and most of the people around you are still asleep. But here's what I learned the hard way, and it's one of the most important lessons on this path. You cannot force other people to wake up, and most importantly, you shouldn't try. I know that sounds harsh, specifically, when you're going through an awakening and you suddenly see things so clearly and you just want to go up to people, you want to shake them and say, "Don't you see? Don't you understand? There's so much more to reality than what you've been told." You want to help them. You want to wake them up too. But it doesn't work that way. I mean, think about it for a second. Imagine if 3 years before your awakening, someone had come up to you and said, "Hey, by the way, everything you believe is actually a lie. The job you love, you're being controlled. That life you're building, it's all part of a system that's designed to keep you asleep. Reality is not what you think it is at all. Your relationship is not as great as you think it is, and you actually don't even know yourself." What would you have done? You would have thought that they were crazy, right? You would have dismissed them, and no matter how much they tried to convince you, you wouldn't have been ready to hear it because you weren't at that point yet. Everyone operates from their own level of consciousness, and the beautiful and sometimes painful truth is that people wake up when their soul is ready to wake up. Not when you think they should, not when you try to convince them, but when they need to. My spiritual awakening came at the exact moment I needed it most, even though at the time I didn't know that, because it was absolute chaos and suffering and it was difficult. But that chaos and suffering was necessary. That breaking point was necessary. And the rug being pulled out from underneath me was necessary because I needed that massive disruption to wake me up from the trance I'd been in my whole life. And that's how it works with everyone. The awakening doesn't come when life is comfortable and easy. It comes when something shatters, when everything you thought was solid crumbles and you hit rock bottom. because then you have no choice but to wake up because staying asleep has become unbearable. So the second thing you should keep to yourself is what the awakening path is like and trying to explain to them the things that you now know. Trust that the people in your life who are meant to wake up will wake up at the exact right moment, in the exact right circumstances that their soul needs. You don't need to do it for them, and you can't do it for them. And if you're still trying to, it will only create resistance. If you go around talking about consciousness and the matrix and spiritual awakenings to people who aren't ready, you're not going to get through them. All you're going to do is invite their judgment and their skepticism into your space, and it's going to make you feel even more isolated and more misunderstood than you probably are ready to. I mean, I'm the one who can really vouch on that, because if my video found you, it's very likely you're on the awakening path, but there are a lot of people that find my videos and they're not on the awakening path, so I get a lot of really awful and mean comments, and it doesn't trigger me because I know we are not functioning on the same length and we are just taking completely different pills, so to say. And as you're going this awakening path, there's also one more thing that you need to keep completely private, and this one is perhaps the most important of all. I have a lot of really deep and wonderful friendships in my life. People that I truly care about, people that I feel safe with, and that I can connect with on a deeper level. But here's something that might surprise you. Not all of these people are on the spiritual path. If anything, the majority of them aren't. And some of my absolute closest friends have absolutely no idea what I fully do. They know that I do something related to spirituality. They know that I work with people. But if I tried to sit them down and explain what a spiritual awakening really is, what shadow work is, or what consciousness shifts feel like, they would look at me and be very, very confused. And you know what? That has never stopped those friendships from being meaningful or fulfilling or deep. Because connection isn't only built on shared spiritual language, it's built on presence, trust, vulnerability, and most importantly, openness. At the same time, I also have friends and communities who are deeply on the spiritual path, people who understand exactly what I'm talking about, like you, and people who have gone through the awakening themselves. And with them, I can go into conversations that are very deep and very spiritual. So in my life, I have both, and that balance has been incredibly important. But that only came about after learning a very important lesson during my awakening. You begin to see people differently. Your perception and insight into others changes. Not just what they say or how they act on the surface, but the energy underneath it. Their intentions, their fears, their patterns, the wounds that they might be carrying without even realizing it. You're able to see and spot the struggles others are going through, where their patterns are, what conditioning they're stuck in. And it's a tricky thing to navigate because on one hand, with your awakening, you're seeing more clearly than ever before, right? You're seeing through all of these struggles and shadows of people that they might not be aware of themselves. But on the other hand, there's a strong temptation that comes with this new awareness. And that temptation is to say something, to point it out, to tell people what you see, to explain their patterns to them, to share your insights about who they are and how they operate. And this is where you can get yourself into trouble, because even if your perception is accurate and what you're seeing feels obvious to you, most people are not ready to hear this truth. When you share your perception of someone else's patterns, especially when it touches something unconscious in them, it rarely lands the way you hope. Instead of feeling understood, people often feel exposed and defensive. Instead of feeling supported, they feel very judged. So the third thing you should keep to yourself is your perception of other people. What you see in them, what you sense about their patterns, and what shadows and blind spots you might be able to spot. Not everything you see needs to be spoken out loud. Sometimes the most conscious thing you can do is observe quietly and allow people to walk their own path without announcing what you see in them. And as you become more aware and sensitive, you may also start feeling overwhelmed by other people's energy. You might notice yourself feeling drained, feeling scattered, or carrying emotions that don't even feel like your own. So watch this video next, where I explain why protecting your energy is essential during a spiritual awakening, and teach you a simple practice you can use anywhere to protect your energy and stay grounded.